All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to another episode of Mondays Down South. As you can see, we have our boy Ev in his new city in New York. We have a special guest, well, a recurring guest, Michael Dolan, writer for medium.com. If you haven't read his articles, they're absolutely incredible. We've been reading, obviously his articles since the start, but we've seen a lot of enhancements, a lot of videos, high HD videos, the pulling some of his analysis. And obviously, Michael Dolan is a big Philadelphia Eagles fan, if you guys haven't been able to tell already, but he did write about the Patriots last week. So lo and behold, he does write about other teams every once in a while, which is good to see. And then obviously, Cy cannot be with us right now. Obviously, dodging a lot of his responsibilities, leaving the country. I know he's our social media guy. We promise, ladies and gentlemen, we will get some more social out. Just give it some time. But Mick, how does it feel to be back on the podcast, man? And how is the Denver area treating you?
It feels good, man. Happy to be back. Definitely looking forward to chatting it up with you guys. It's always fun. I could talk football for 24 hours a day if you asked me to. Definitely bummed missing Cy. Hope you're enjoying yourself over there in Ireland, buddy. Would love to come back again sometime when you're here so we can chat it up. But all things are good in Denver. I was just telling Evan right before this, I'm actually heading to the Broncos game in 2 weeks on Halloween Day when the football team's coming to town. So that should be a good one. First taste of some live football action this year will be super exciting. And thanks for all the kind words about my writing. I don't think I'm any good, but I certainly appreciate it. And looking forward to sharing some thoughts here with my spoken words today instead.
I love it. And I have to give you a hard time, and we will definitely have you on again later in the year. That's on me. I invited you and was like, oh no, Sai's not going to be on that one. So appreciate you coming on anyway, but we'll get you back when we're all here. But I got to pick on you for the Eagles article, which was probably my favorite one you did. I don't know why it just struck a chord with me. I thought it was a well-written one. And as I put in the comment, it got me so fired up that I switched my my pick that week to the Eagles upsetting Dallas, which didn't work out so well. So I'm gonna pin that one on you, that loss on you. But yeah, man, good stuff.
That's a repressed memory at this point. I don't even know what you're talking about.
That's fair. And we'll link if I guess Zach remembers this. We'll put a link in to your articles in the description if anyone sees that. But
appreciate it.
But yeah. And my question about Cy's not here, but obviously the Colts played on Monday Night Football last night. So Zach, Dolan and I were talking about this before you jumped on. But the question is, I guess, twofold. One, did he stay up until, I guess, what's that? Got to be 4 a.m. Dublin time or wherever in Ireland he is to watch that game. And two, did he stay up for the whole game or did he give up when they had that big lead before they blew it in overtime and chalked up another loss to Baltimore? What do you think, Zach?
It's so funny how you guys were talking about this because my roommate and I were talking about the exact same thing last night. I even Googled Trinity Bar District, which is like the main Irish bar strip, to see what time the bar shut down. My roommate was like, nah, there's no way. It's such a tourism spot. They're 24/7 at this point. And I was like, I don't know. I think they close like any other bar does. Sure enough, they closed at 1 a.m. Irish time, whatever time zone that is, guys. And so we could confirm that he was not able to watch the game at the bar last night. So
I'm sure he found a way.
What he did.
I'm sure he found a way.
I feel like he racked up a really expensive international roaming plan bill so that he could watch the game. But yeah, overall, I mean, it was a good game for him to miss. Right. I mean, the first half was pretty electric. Baltimore Ravens defense is kind of been a little disappointing. I think they're missing guys like Matt Judon quite a bit. Obviously, Marcus Peters going out with the injury before the season started, but obviously Lamar did Lamar things, almost fumbled twice on the 1 yard line. If you guys saw that, luckily he was down, but ultimately just such another resilient performance for Lamar Jackson. And these Ravens, I believe, are a one-loss team. And they, very close to being a 5-0 team, assuming they walked away with the victory against the Raiders. But Mick, what'd you think about the Monday night game last night? And what were some of your takeaways?
I mean, I thought it was awesome. It was just excitement, like the whole, I guess you can't really say the whole game. The beginning was a little rough and got a little lopsided pretty quickly. But I think just like, and it's what everybody's talking about now, but watching how when teams are like, okay, Lamar, you're not going to be able to run the ball on us. And he still had 60 yards of offense, but as a whole, the Ravens rushing game was pretty well shut down. And he was just like, okay, fine. Like, I am a quarterback. Like, stop calling me a wide receiver. Stop calling me a running back. And he just absolutely diced them up. I mean, Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown both played fantastic football. And they were going up against what I think is a pretty tough Colts defense. I was kind of surprised they didn't open up the passing game earlier due to a weaker secondary. But man, once they started pouring it on, they are absolutely unstoppable. About those fumbles, though, I'm not entirely sure why they called that second one back, but obviously it made for an interesting ending either way. So yeah, it was just electric the whole time. Awesome primetime television.
Yeah, I have to admit, I didn't catch the end. I had flipped to some baseball and then gave up on the football game before they started to come back. But just by looking at the highlights, you got to give Lamar a lot of credit for that one, and specifically through the air. Obviously, I've been a Lamar hater on his arm for his entire career, and that was a big time prove it game for him in the passing game. But also the Colts ended up blowing it, obviously, but they have to be pretty encouraged as well to see that kind of efficiency on offense. I mean, Wentz, from what I saw, looks pretty good. Jonathan Taylor obviously had a nice game, but Michael Pittman looks like he's going to be a stud receiver. So, and with that division, with how Tennessee looks, I think the Colts can also be encouraged. But man, it's got to be heartbreaking for them now that they're looking at a 1-4 spot. And again, they can still catch the Titans, who don't look too good, but got to be a heartbreaker for them. But at least they'll probably encourage that they, kind of are starting to look more like the team they expected preseason.
I don't know, man. I got to disagree with you there, Ev. You got to start winning games. Philly is winning games. Now, should they have beat Carolina last week? Not from what I saw, but they won the game, right? And it's like, how many excuses are we going to give the Indianapolis Colts for staying competitive throughout the game? Their roster, you look at their roster, you look at their depth chart, that's a 12-5 roster team. And I don't know what's going on, but they were 11-5 last year with Mr. Checkdown himself, Phillip Rivers. Carson Wentz, or you could argue that Wentz opens up the offense a lot more with, more deep throws down the field on a consistent basis, working with his old coach, or I guess his old coordinator, Frank Reich. And for some reason, they're just slipping through the cracks. So, I appreciate the fact that they played competitively, but you could argue that they gave that game away last night. And Carson did make a pretty poor throw in the red zone on an out pattern that he should not have thrown. So, it's complete hindsight bias. He's definitely improving, but you got to win games. And that's something that the Colts are not doing, and they should be ashamed of it.
You're just trying to fire up Cy.
Yeah, I just can't wait for him to listen to this. I'm going to get a dude.
You make a good point, though. It does come to a point where it's like being close isn't good enough when you're expected to be a playoff team. You need to actually start closing games. But
I did speak of Philly, though. And Mick, I'm not sure if you had any remarks to kind of my tirade there, or if you wanted to jump and talk about your own team, because that was quite the performance. You could start us off on either one you choose, but yeah, Philly with that big win as well in Carolina.
Yeah, a quick note on Colts before moving onwards. Definitely tough when a game goes into overtime and you miss a field goal and get one blocked in the fourth quarter. So that's always tough. But I still am liking their chances of winning the division. Frank Reich has typically been a slow starter. If you look at their record in like September, October, it's not pretty, but then they kind of get things going. And they're in a division that might be worse than the NFC East last year. So they absolutely have a chance. But as moving over to the Eagles, I like you said, it's kind of one of those things where, especially with the young team, I mean, Jalen Hurts is basically a rookie quarterback. Their number one option in the passing game is a rookie. Their offensive line was a veteran group, but then they all got hurt. And now they're leaning on a bunch of young guys there. It's nice to see them win the game and just kind of pull out. Think about where this season's going to go, but I like Jalen Hurts more and more every time I see that guy play, and every article I read about him is just like nothing but praise for his work ethic. Definitely going to get a reality check this week when we're playing the Bucs on Thursday night. So not thinking the win streak's going to extend to 2, but absolutely always good to get a win, even if it takes like a blocked punt or something like that to get there. It's just sometimes you got to win ugly, and that felt good. And always nice to not see your defense let up 40 points for the third week in a row.
I tell you what, you have the number of the NFC South. I mean, obviously, I'm repping my Falcons hat because we somehow snuck out a win in London. But obviously the Eagles smoked us week one. They beat Carolina, and I mean, I feel like they just have the NFC's they're out for them this year. So if you guys are playing the Saints, I'm assuming, and the Buccaneers at some point, it'll be interesting to see how you guys fare off as you guys continue to improve. And I mean, you guys are 100% in that division, despite the fact that Dallas is looking pretty damn good. Ev, any games you want to mention? I know Washington didn't do too hot, so figured I'd send it over your way.
Yeah, that's probably a skip for me. Thursday night, obviously it's been almost a full week at this point, but I guess, not necessarily talk about the game as a whole too much. Obviously the Rams pulled it out, but looks like Russell Wilson's going to be out 4 to 5, if not more weeks with that finger injury. I guess how does that change your kind of projection of Seattle? Like, can they even make the playoffs at this point? When they're already at, I guess, what are they, 2-3, and then they're going to be rolling with Geno Smith for the next handful of weeks. What do you guys think about their playoff chances?
I'll probably just quickly touch on that. I think, despite the fact that Geno played incredibly well, he looked super poised too. I mean, you could tell that he was a veteran. It's just, he's definitely one of the better or more above average backup quarterbacks in the NFL, no doubt about it. But there still are inevitable struggles when you don't have, one of the best quarterbacks, arguably a top 5 quarterback in the league, not, behind the mainframe of that offense. So I think it's going to be a tough road ahead, especially considering they play in arguably the best division, maybe outside of the AFC West. But Mick, I'll kick it over to you. I think the Seahawks are kind of sunk, but I'm curious to see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Unlike what we were saying with the Colts, they are not playing in the AFC South. They're playing in the toughest division in football, in my opinion. AFC West is definitely giving them a run for their money, but I still think it's the NFC West. And I just don't see, as good as Russell Wilson is, if they keep digging themselves in a deeper and deeper hole, it's going to be really, really tough with the teams that they each have to play twice. So I don't want to say they're out because we've all seen Russell Wilson pull a rabbit out of a hat before. But it is definitely not looking likely.
So it's 7 teams still, right, that make the playoffs?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I pulled up the standings, and now that, I mean, it is 7. Like, I don't know. It is going to be tough though, because usually they stack those division games at the end. Although they've played a lot of them already, so we'll just have to see. But yeah, it's going to be tough because you got to think with Geno. I think they have a hard game this week too, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, it's Pittsburgh. They win that, but it's going to be tough. Tough to pull that out, but
much as I think they don't like Pittsburgh, they're that defense is going to eat Geno Smith alive.
We'll see. We'll get to the pick segment, but Zach, you got another game?
Yeah, I got another one. I'll kick this one over to Mick here. I mean, what in the world happened with the Chargers and the Browns? I felt like it was like a Stonebridge defense out there. Actually, no, worse than Stonebridge defense, maybe a backyard football. And we're talking like high school mixed playing QB. It was a really, really horrible performance on defense for both sides. And you could argue that both defenses are top 10 in the league. I mean, especially with Derwin James healthy, and some of the corners that they drafted in the offseason for the Chargers and obviously the Browns as well. So what in the world happened in that game? And do you think that the Chargers are now the favorites to win the AFC West?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think I have to go Chiefs still until proven otherwise. We're talking about like the team that's been the elite of the elite in the past few years of the NFL. But the Chargers are certainly knocking on the door. And obviously the fact that it's the Chargers who seem to just be the unluckiest team, arguably in like the NFL over the past decade, doesn't really help the case. But I mean, Herbert really does look amazing. I know he's getting a ton of buzz, but like he's right there in that elite tier of quarterbacks with Mahomes. And as far as that game, I just thought it was fascinating to watch how 2 completely different styles of football both just absolutely lit up the scoreboard. I mean, you got the Chargers who were just slinging the ball around. Austin Eckler is playing like, I don't know, bizarre style of running back where he's just getting the ball in a million different ways. Keenan Allen was somehow an afterthought in that game, and they still put up 47 points or whatever it was. They're going for two all the time. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you get the Browns, who, like, their passing game definitely stepped it up a little bit when they needed to. But I mean, they were just running the ball down the Chargers' throat all game. And I was fascinated by the offensive output. I was switching back and forth between that game and then the Cardinals-Niners game. But it's like every time I look back, it's like someone's in the red zone, or shoot, maybe they weren't even getting there because they're scoring from 50 plus. But that was a fun game to watch. And I think both of those teams are definitely going to be playing come January as well.
Yeah, that game was insane. It was kind of ruined for me because in our main fantasy league, I was facing Herbert. But that was the deciding game for our 3-game parlay. And somehow I threaded that needle and won in fantasy, and we won our parlay anyway. But it did kind of make that game more stressful than I would have liked if I was just sitting there watching that awesome offense. But yeah, you can beat the Chargers on the ground, I will say, like with, Bosa's more pass rusher and then Derwin in the secondary. You can run the ball on him, but Herbert, man, it's just, I mean, that guy is just a tank. Now, granted, there were some blown coverages there by the Browns in that one, leaving Mike Williams just completely wide open. But yeah, that game was awesome. And follow up to this, I wanted to pose a question. I feel like, 5 games in is a good time to kind of assess where we stand. And I'm shocked to see Mick take the Chiefs still as the favorite after what happened on Sunday night. So give me like your top 5 power rankings in each conference really quickly. I gave mine yesterday offline, but I'm curious to see where everyone stands after all that happened this week.
Ooh. I mean, if I were to just combine them, because there's so many teams that are right there, but clear cut steps back. I would say like just top 5 in general. I'd say the Bills have re-solidified themselves at that number 1 spot, in my opinion. But I mean, in maybe no particular order, I think the Chargers are up there because they're actually defensively sound, and albeit the last game, and they're relatively healthy. I think you could argue the Browns are right up there as well. Actually, I mean, the Browns are so disciplined from a running standpoint. Their offensive line is without a doubt the number 1 team, in terms of run and pass protection. I would say the Rams are certainly up there. Oh gosh, my 5th would probably be, I'd probably sneak Dallas in over Green Bay.
Ugh.
I would say those are probably my top 5 right now. Is there any that you would replace, Mick, from that list?
I'm trying to think.
Oh shoot, the Cardinals.
I was going to say I want to put the Cardinals in there, but I can't quite do it yet. I would say if I had to rattle them off the top of my head, I'm giving the Bills the number 1 spot. They definitely earned it. Number 2, I think, kind of going back to what we were saying, like sometimes you just got to win football games, and I've loved every second of watching the Ravens play this year. I think they're number 2 for me. Number 3, I would still probably have to go. I think, despite the fact that the Rams won the game, I think the Rams and the Bucks are 3 and 4 right there for me. I would not be surprised. Those are just 2 of the most well-balanced teams. I know both of their defenses have been a little underwhelming this year to start off, but I would not be shocked at all if they kind of course correct there. And then 5. 5 is tough. It feels criminal not putting the Chiefs in there, but I don't think I can do it. I think I would have to go with Green Bay at 5. I mean, I'm just throwing week 1 out the window, and I think that offense is still one of the best in the league. And I'm all in on this is the Aaron Rodgers revenge tour, and he's just going to light the league on fire. So I think those, and the way I view this is like the 5 most likely teams to win the Super Bowl. And so for me, I think it's those 5. And if I had a little more time to think about it, maybe the order would shift up a little bit. Maybe I forgot a team, but I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I put you guys on the spot. I think my 5 in each conference were Bills, Chargers. I had Chiefs, but it's hard to put the Chiefs over Baltimore at this point. And so I guess maybe Baltimore, then Chiefs, then Browns. And then NFC. I have to put the Cardinals at 1. I think they've earned it at this point. Like, they haven't played the Bucks, but they did slaughter the Rams. So, you can call that a fluke game, which I kind of agree that it probably is. And when they play again, I'd probably take the Rams, including in a potential playoff matchup. But I think they've done enough to put themselves at 1, and then I'll go Rams, Bucks, Packers, Cowboys. And if you even them out, Bills, yeah, I think best team in the NFL. Maybe Bills, Chargers, then the 3 NFC teams I mentioned, maybe. But
I'll actually pose another question to you guys. So 5 weeks into the season, like Evan mentioned, if we could pick one team that will ascend based on their current record, right? And we'll exclude the Chiefs in this one. The Chiefs would be a great example of this, right? Because they're gonna, I mean, based off like standard deviation, they're going to kind of get back to where they're supposed to be. So one team that will ascend exponentially from this point forward, and one team that will descend exponentially from this point forward, based on what you've seen. Ev, I'll actually start this one over with you.
Ooh, great question. I have to scan through the teams here quick.
Mick, if you're ready, you can go.
Yeah,
you're ready.
Spot there.
The one that's jumping out at me, and I might be a little biased just because I did a ton of research on them last week when I was writing, is the Patriots. I do think I loved what I saw out of Mac Jones in that Sunday night game. Bill Belichick proved that he still got it. I mean, they didn't end up winning the game, but the way that they hung very well with the Bucs with a seemingly outmatched roster, if we're being perfectly honest, I think was impressive. And I think as Jones continues to grow, he continues to learn the offense. And then on the other end of the spectrum, McDaniels learns how to work with Jones. I think the Patriots are going to be trending in the right direction at the end of the year. I realize that's a very tough thing to say after they squeak by the Texans, but I think that's going back to kind of what you were saying. Sometimes you just got to win ugly. Sometimes you got to realize like, hey, we got to give it our best every single week. And coming off of that like game with so much hype of Brady returning to New England, like it does kind of make sense that the following week would be a letdown, and being able to escape a letdown week with a win, I think is huge. So I think they're my trending up team. I'll pass it over to you, Evan, if you've got either of your answers ready while I think of my downward trend.
My trending up, we talked about it earlier, but I genuinely think the Colts are going to start to play a lot better. And I think by the end of the year, they're certainly going to be, I think, above 5. They are 1-4, but I think they'll be above 500. And right up there with the Titans, maybe even winning that division. And I have my other one ready as well. I'm going to say Dallas. I know it's looked awesome. Their schedule will be easy towards the end when they get to play the NFC East teams, although some of those teams will hopefully start to play better and might not be bad by the end of the year. But I'm still not convinced. It's not going to look this easy all year long. And I'm not convinced they're going to end at more than, I'd say, 11-6 at best. So those are going to be my two.
Oh, geez. For me, this is going to be interesting if this doesn't work out because they're playing each other this week. But I think my ascending upward team is Minnesota. I think they're a little bit more defensively sound. Patrick Peterson has solidified that number one corner spot that they were kind of missing last year. Everson Griffin is getting, down and dirty. They're recording sacks at, exponential rates compared to their prior season. And I think Kirk looks a little bit more comfortable. I think him and Mike Zimmer, they've had their differences, but I think they kind of had that coming together movement when they were kind of like pushing each other on the sidelines, yelling, "You like that" type of phrases, like when they closed the game out last week. And then obviously with Dalvin coming back healthy and then also using Madison as well, I think that they're going to ascend upward. Had a couple unfortunate games where they lost in the last seconds, right? So that's my ascending upward team. And I do think Carolina actually starts to slip, guys. The performance against Philly at home was pretty inexcusable. And I know they didn't have Christian McCaffrey, and I know he's coming back next week, or at least on that trajectory too. But I think Sam Darnold has been one hell of an acquisition for them, and I do think he'll continue to grow. But with that comes mistakes, and he's starting to make really bad decisions with the football. And I think they have a legitimate problem scoring. Great skill position players, not denying that. I think DJ Moore has turned himself into a borderline tier 1, tier 2 athlete. He's incredible. But I just don't trust them, especially with JC Horn down. They've got Gilmore coming in, but I have my concerns with Carolina being a playoff team. I think they kind of slip or fall from grace a little bit there.
Yeah, Carolina was actually the one I was thinking about. So I'll go with my other team here, and I'm probably going to eat it. Can't talk. Probably going to eat my words on this one, but I am still not completely sold on the Cardinals for whatever reason whatever reason. I just do not trust an offense where it's just like, all right, let's snap the ball and have Kyler run around in the backfield for 5 seconds before throwing it up to, granted, 2 fantastic receivers in DeAndre Hopkins. And then AJ Green is looking like he's found a little bit of the fountain of youth. They've got a ton of weapons, but I don't know what it is. It just does not seem sustainable. It's just at a certain point, like we saw it last year when Kyler got hurt and like his production dipped off. I just, obviously I'm not banking on or expecting him to get hurt again, but I just think at a certain point, some team's going to kind of unlock the key to this offense, which, easier said than done. And I have a very hard time seeing Cliff Kingsbury adjusting when that does happen. I could be very wrong, and Kyler could just be that special where he kind of overcomes a weaker offensive line and one of the less exciting coaching staffs in the league. But again, like we were touching on earlier, that is a very, very tough division. And I think sooner or later, things are going to start to get a little rocky. Though I do still think they're a very good team. I just do not think they are an elite team, I guess. So I don't know if that exactly counts, but that's the one that popped in my head.
Yeah. No, it certainly can't go up from here. So that was, definitely that was my second one as well. I certainly think they're a playoff team and whatnot, but I will say their defense is what's really underrated though. Like they have, a top 5 certainly defense, and even last week when the offense couldn't get it going, they were still able to win. But the other thing, I mentioned this over the weekend, but I think the Cardinals front office just deserves a lot of credit just for kind of like bargain hunting a little bit this offseason, and guys like getting AJ Green through free agency, Rondale Moore, a later round draft pick who's had a huge impact. Like they made a lot of, James Conner has been a nice addition. Like they did a really good job this offseason, and a lot of kind of head scratching moves at the time have really paid out big for them. And obviously getting JJ Watt, which, I don't know, you can't really call it that bargain hunting, but, it certainly was a nice move there. He's
looked like a monster this year.
Yeah. All right. What other games? We should get to picks here soon. I kind of went out of order before we actually had a chance to talk about that Chiefs-Bills game, but that was ugly. It was kind of weird with the weather and the delay there in the middle, but the Chiefs really haven't looked good all year long. Pat Mahomes playing hero ball. They have no defense. The offensive line isn't too good. And specifically last night, like something just genuinely looked wrong with Mahomes. Like I never really seen that from him. Mick, you seem still confident in them as an elite team. But I don't know. I'm starting to maybe think the tide is turning here, and that maybe the Chiefs have kind of lost it. And it's one of those things when your team gets so good, you got to pay guys a lot of money, and that's just kind of how it goes. That's why it's so hard to do. So I don't know. What do you guys think about the Chiefs? And do you think they'll come back to where they were, or are they starting to fall back off?
Yeah, as you kind of alluded to, I definitely am still a believer in the Chiefs. I, as an Eagles fan forever, have a ton of trust in Andy Reid to kind of right this ship. And I think it might be one of those deals where whenever their bye week is, I don't know, I'm not looking at the schedule in front of me. Like, it's like, okay, that's kind of the magic potion that fixes everything. It's like, okay, we get things right. We might start seeing a lot of games. I think the defense is a legitimate concern. We might start seeing a lot of games like that Chargers-Browns game we talked about, where they're just going to have to keep up. But I do not think the turnovers from Mahomes are going to be something that we see continue. They have basically an entirely brand new offensive line this year. And that's one of those units that just kind of takes some time to gel. But I think it's kind of one of those deals where it's just like they need to take a step back and breathe, and everything is going to be fine. They're going to have to put up points, but if there's one offense that can do that, like I'm betting on the Chiefs to do it anytime. Like they'll lose a couple shootouts maybe, but I would be shocked if they lose more than, I don't know, 3 games over the rest of the season. 3 additional games, that is. So yeah, I'm still a big time believer in them, but got to definitely tip the cap to the Bills because they looked like a much more balanced team. And I don't see how I could pick them losing to the Chiefs again in the playoffs, especially if it goes to Buffalo.
So Mick just mentioned the magical number 3 of games that they will lose for the remainder of the season. And I'll take that 3 and I'll spin it and say 3 is the number of plays that Sorensen will blow for, the I'm not sure if you guys saw the picture or not, but like Matthew, the honey badger, was like looking back with his Sorensen, obviously as a strong safety had the responsibility to track anybody going deep down the field. And he had blown 3 assignments. And I think 2 of them came in the first half. One was a brutal play to end the half. And some of the pictures that were taken, like showing these moments, like he wasn't even within 20 yards of the receiver. So pretty comical on my end. But I think that is actually the biggest concern that the Chiefs face is I agree with Mick. I think the offense will get it under wraps. But I do think that a major issue at play is the Chiefs defense, which at this point they're performing like a bottom 5 tier defense. Like I would say they're one of the 5 worst defenses. They got to get it together here. I think Spagnuolo is still their coordinator. He needs to do something creative. And I think it starts with getting Sorensen out of that strong safety spot. Ev?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much to add to that, but yeah, the defense obviously needs to pick it up. So I think that's it from my side. Anything else from you guys before we jump into picks? I guess we could mention John Gruden obviously resigning after all the ugliness in his the emails that they dug up from about 10 years ago. I mean, football impact, obviously it changes the Raiders organization because they pretty much built it around him. Although it wasn't going so well to begin with, so maybe that helps them getting out from that contract. I don't know if you guys have any takes on kind of where that takes the Raiders organization, or I don't know. And the Raiders aren't exactly a brewing dynasty, so
yeah, I think one just good on the NFL for kind of acting upon this. This is a league where these things have kind of been swept under the rug a little far too often. So good on them for taking action. But from a football perspective, yeah, you got to say, I mean, I know Gruden gets a lot of flack, but he is a pretty good coach from an offensive perspective. I think makes some questionable decisions as a GM, but I do still think he was a good football coach. And I think there's no way that this team doesn't take a step back as a result. And I think they're already trending in the wrong direction. I think it really hurts Derek Carr in the passing game because they seem to have had a pretty good relationship. And that was one of the areas of the team that, has kind of stepped it up a little bit this year. But yeah, Zach, I remember, I think either in week 1 or right before the season started off, you had predicted the Raiders being a 3-win team. They already hit that mark, but I would not be surprised if things really start to go south and they don't get many more.
Yep, I was just predicting this entire situation to unfold at this point in time. But I think Mick, he put the hammer on the nail there. I think obviously for football, it's unfortunate. This is a football icon, a Super Bowl winning coach, and it's pretty tough to see that. But obviously it puts people in a difficult position, and I think the right decision was made. But I'm going to miss seeing John Gruden on the field because he brings such an energy, and there are a lot of people that speak very highly of him. So it'll be you could argue that the reason they had moved to Oakland and Las Vegas, I mean, that was obviously a done deal, but maybe the Gruden hiring was kind of like a catalyst behind the movement, or at least expediting the movement. So that might be, I'm not sure how accurate that is or not, but he did bring a lot of energy, and obviously Vegas thrived off of it. So it's sad to see him go. And obviously it just goes to show you, I mean, you got to blow off steam, but you should never be putting things like that in writing. So I'm not sure if you had any thoughts.
No, and the Gruden to Vegas point is interesting. You could also make the argument that it was the other way around, that them making that ridiculous contract for a guy that hasn't coached in so long was because of them going to Vegas. They want to make a big splash. And, again, maybe it gets them out of that contract. But, and Dolan, good point on Derek Carr. I actually think Derek Carr is a really good quarterback. I could see it going either way because they did start to seem to they had a really good relationship, but there was always like that, almost like, he was almost like babying him compared to, how he would handle his quarterbacks in the past and making excuses for him. So I'm interested to see how Carr turns out if he stays there, which way that goes. And then the third point, kind of a funny point. I don't know if you guys saw that Bruce Allen, the former Washington football team exec, was the guy leaking these emails, or at least was on the receiving end, which I assume he was the leak. And there was some funny commentary that because he also was behind some of the other leaks, obviously, so he's just taking down everyone. He took down Jay Gruden, and now he took down John Gruden. It's just
it's not like the Gruden family, I guess. But.
Yeah, I mean, because Bruce Allen was always the shadiest of our front office. Say what you want about Snyder, but I always thought that Bruce was the most hated of the bunch from the players' perspective and just how he handled things. So go figure that Bruce Allen found his way to be back involved in this mess. But We should carry over to picks. Yeah.
Carry over to really funny.
Carry over to picks here. I'll recap last week. Overall, everyone did pretty well. I went 12-4. There were 13 favorites won though. So 12-4 isn't really that good. Cy was 13-3, right on par with the number of favorites. Our guest Marty was a little lower at 11-5. But Zach, I don't want to clap too loud because it'll sound awful on audio, but dude, you went 15-1 last week.
There we go.
Which is absolutely, again, 13 favorites are won, but that's pretty astounding getting the Philly upset pick, which we all gave you a hard time for, which saved that from being in our parlay. And then your other big upset was, what'd you have? Feel free to remind me if you remember, but you had two good ones.
I don't know. I remember. I'm trying to.
You had Chicago. I guess New Orleans wasn't an upset, but that was different. Anyway, 15-1. Incredible stuff. What do you have to say for yourself? And obviously, we went 3 for 3 on our parlay, so that's 2 out of the last 3 weeks that we are cashing out here.
What do I have to say for myself? I'm not surprised. Yeah. I'm not surprised.
Who was the one?
The one it's got to be Chiefs, I think.
Oh yeah, it's got
Chiefs. It was Chiefs.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you picked.
Oh yeah, that would make sense because they torched the Bills in the playoffs last year, so I think I was like,
right.
But yeah. Anyways, I mean, hey, we kick it over to week
sweet
6 here. Really excited to do this with Dolan. Obviously, Sai's going to send us our picks a little bit later. So without further ado, Mick, we could start with you here. Your Eagles are playing on this this Thursday night, hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Tampa Bay holds a spread of 7.0. Now it's going to be in Lincoln Financial. It's going to be rocking. Mick, what you got?
After all that tee up, I can't take the Eagles in this one. As much as I'd love to see it happen, they are just such a young team. Their defense, again, played well this past week. The offense outside of last week has looked pretty good. But there are a lot of holes on this team, and there are not a lot of holes on the Bucs. I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles can put up some points against the secondary, but the Bucs are too good. Tom Brady's going to just rip apart the holes in our defense, and I could see this being a double-digit game. I mean, I'll cross my fingers and hope for more. But Thursday nights are always a little weird, and I got to go with the Bucs. I probably think they'd cover too. I might be just like emotionally preparing myself a little bit and lowering my expectations, but I don't think the Eagles can win this one.
Yeah, Tampa Bay will win. I never picked defending champs to cover after what happened last season with the Chiefs, but Tampa Bay will win for sure. The Eagles, there's no way they win 2 games in a row, much less against the defending champs.
Yeah, I'd say Tampa Bay wins this, and I do think they cover, but I'm a little nervous about that one because they do sometimes have a hard time pulling away from people, as evidenced in like the New England game, for example. So, something to keep our eye on. But moving on to the next game here, I'll probably start this one off. Miami Dolphins playing at the Jacksonville Jaguars. These teams are combined 1-9. I am actually going to take the Jaguars money line here. I think they get their first win at home. And right now the spread is 3.5 Miami's way. I'll kick it over to Mick for the next pick here.
So one thing to notice, they're the home team, but it looks like they're kind of at home. I mean, London is basically home for the Jaguars, it seems. So for whatever reason, no matter what's going on in the NFL, the Jaguars are going to win when they're in London. So maybe Urban Meyer just needs to get out of the country and clear his head a little bit. But I'm kind of with you. I like the Jags. And like you were saying, the Bucs having trouble kind of finishing off teams. They had absolutely zero problem doing that to Miami last week, and they looked bad. Not that the Jaguars look good, but I'm thinking a little London magic could happen this week.
That is a good point to adjust the number there, but I think Miami wins. I don't think they're a 1-4 team that their record shows. I mean, it looked bad last week, but I think they win and probably cover that.
Okay. Sounds good. Moving on to the next game. Ev, we'll start with you on this one. The Green Bay Packers are playing in Chicago against the Bears. Green Bay has a spread of 4.5 right now. They did not cover last week. What are your thoughts?
Green Bay always tends to slip up in the middle of the season. Chicago is starting to look pretty good, but Green Bay always finds a way to win in Soldier Field. So I'm going to take Green Bay. Probably not cover though.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of analytical insight to add into this, but like when we were doing the power rankings, I just think Green Bay is really good. I think Rodgers and Adams, you really saw that connection kind of show what we're used to seeing last week. Even AJ Dillon looked fantastic. I think the run game's starting to click a little bit. Green Bay's just a better team, and I think even on the road, they'll win this. And when it comes down to rookie quarterback against one of the best to ever do it, hard to pick against Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and lean Green Bay's direction here. But one thing that makes me nervous is Green Bay is not playing their two top corners, Kevin King, and then obviously Jared Alexander's out in the IR. So, well, I guess Kevin King's a little bit more questionable, but that does make me a little nervous. Not necessarily against a rookie quarterback, though. So I've got Green Bay winning and covering that 4.5 spread. Moving on to the next game here, Mick, we'll start with you. The Cincinnati Bengals playing at the Detroit Lions in Ford Field. Cincinnati holds a 3.5 spread, but Detroit has been close, just no cigar.
Yeah, I think exactly what you're saying. Because Detroit has been so close, I'm so tempted to pick them, and I really want to. I think I gotta go with Cincinnati, not by much. And if I was placing a bet, I would definitely take the points with Detroit. It feels crazy putting any money on the Lions. The Bengals are actually one of the teams that I was thinking about talking about the downward trend earlier, but they almost feel like they're not a downward trend team because I feel like they're still not quite like hyped up, and people aren't necessarily viewing them as like serious threats. But I just think their offense is substantially better than Detroit's, and neither of these defenses are particularly great. So wouldn't be surprised if it ends in like a Burrow to Jamar Chase on a last minute drive or something with an exciting ending. But I think the Bengals will squeak out a tight one.
This is a tough one. Dan Campbell was in tears at his press conference after how close they've been. I think I'm going to regret it, but I'm going to take Detroit. I'm sucked into the moral, or not the moral, but the sentimental side of this one.
It almost got me too. That clip was playing in my head the whole time, and I was like, "Come on, don't cave."
Oh man, I want to take Detroit, but I'm going to take Cincinnati to win and cover. And I just think because of that gut-wrenching loss at home against Green Bay, where they just slipped through their fingers. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals kicker was prematurely celebrating before the icing was on the cake.
That was amazing.
That was.
I thought he made it too, to be honest. And then the wind just grabbed it and said, "Not today, young man."
I'm not going to overthink things. I'm going to take Cincinnati to win and cover here. I think that's pretty plausible. Moving on to our next game here. I could start this one off. The Houston Texans playing at the Indianapolis Colts here in Lucas Oil. Both teams 1-4. Both teams looking for a win. Indianapolis carries a 9.5 spread. I think that happens. I think the Colts win and they cover. And I think this is like the first turnaround of this Colts team. Jalen Mills had a better game, right? I mean, hats off to him last game, but I just think the Colts come out firing. I think they go up 10-0 early, and I think they're able to kind of hold that double-digit spread barely throughout the remainder of the game.
Yeah, there's no way the Colts lose this with everything I said earlier. I hate betting those huge numbers, but I could definitely see this one happening, although Houston tends to keep it close. But
yeah, nothing really to add there. I think what we touched on, like, Indy needs to start winning, and this is exactly a get-right game. I hate taking expecting a double-digit win anytime it's a division rival. I mean, granted, rivalry might not be super strong here, but these teams know each other. I think it'll be relatively close, but it'll be one of the games where you kind of know the outcome the whole time, but wouldn't be surprised if it finished under 10 points.
All right, moving on to our next game here, starting off with E. The LA Rams are traveling across country. I know you hate those cross-country travels, Ev, to play the New York Giants. Right now, the Rams carry a 10.5 spread. Give us your thoughts, man. What do you think happens?
I'll say the Rams win, but there's a rule in betting I learned from Barstool that if there's ever a home dog of 10 points or more, you always take them to cover. It's not in our matrix, so we won't be betting it in the parlay, but I'm definitely saying the Giants cover that, but the Rams win.
I agree.
I actually haven't checked the Giants injury report. I don't know. I mean, I know Saquon, it sounds like he's going to be out. I don't know if what's his name, Mike Glennon's playing quarterback. I don't see how this is less than a 2-touchdown game.
That's a good point.
No, Danny Dimes is playing.
He is playing. Okay.
But Kenny G is doubtful.
Okay.
They have enough receivers, though.
I still think I'm taking the Rams probably to cover, but kind of what you're saying, Evan, like that is a very good rule and it's tough to go against. I wouldn't touch this with an actual bet, but definitely going to take the Rams to win. I think they would cover if you had to get an answer out of me.
So how is Danny Dimes going to play though, Zach? I mean, there's no way he doesn't have a concussion. I mean, he was like wobbling around there. Well,
I mean, look at Devontae Adams. That dude had a bad concussion a couple weeks ago. He came in 3 plays later. I was like, where's the NFL conduct policy here? All right, switching over to the next game here. Ev, we'll allow you to go to first here because this is the Washington football team. Kansas City's coming into town, by the way, and they're playing in Landover, looking for a response victory. And Kansas City holds a 7.0 spread. What do you got?
Just want to have some fun. I mean, talk about a team that has no over-the-top defense. Can you imagine a worse opponent to play when you give up 60-yard touchdown passes multiple times a game to anyone? Washington loses and Kansas City probably covers after last week. Although Kansas City genuinely looks terrible. And Washington will pull a big upset because of how hard their schedule is. They're going to have one. It's not going to be this one, but they will pull one surprise this year, but no way.
Nick, what do you think?
I think Evan kind of hit the nail on the head here. I think the bet to make here is the over in this game because for some reason Washington has a terrible defense this year. I still kind of confident that they'll turn things around just because of how much talent they have. But Kansas City is definitely not a get-right game for defense. I think they win and cover, and I think points are flying off the board this one.
Ooh, I'm with you guys 100%. I like the over. And I think I can't confidently say that Kansas City covers that spread, but they will win this game. I think that's a pretty good bet there. Moving on to the next game. I'll start this one off because I was talking about these two teams earlier. Minnesota Vikings are coming into my city of Charlotte playing against the Panthers. Both teams desperately looking for a win here. And so Carolina actually opened -1 at home, but that has since switched to Minnesota -1. I think Minnesota comes out and they win this by 3 or more points. I think they handsomely cover this spread, but I'll kick it over to E. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think Minnesota wins. Although when you think about that number, it says Minnesota's 4.5 points better than Carolina. That makes it kind of tough to pick because I don't think they're that much better. But yeah, I think Minnesota starts to flip the script on their season, like you said earlier. So I've got Minnesota as well.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I know I was saying I was a little bearish on the Panthers earlier, but for some reason I am just forever bearish on Kirk Cousins. And like it has, I bitten me in the ass multiple times in the past betting against him, but I have not learned my lesson. I think this is kind of one of those get right games that Carolina needs after dropping 2 straight. They're staying at home. I think they got the better defense. I think the offense is, a little worse. I would say a different story if McCaffrey plays. Wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and has like 200 all-purpose yards and two or three touchdowns. Just like, hey, remember who I am. This is a really weird line, but I'll take the Panthers, but I don't feel good about it.
That's a pretty good argument too. You might have
forgot about Christian
pick,
McCaffrey.
Actually, I might have to take another look at this pick. But actually, to your point too, Mick, is both McCaffrey and Dalvin are coming back. So both teams are actually getting their superstars back in this game, the top 2 picks in pretty much every fantasy football draft. So that is something to watch. Moving on to the next game here, we've got the Chargers playing in Baltimore against the Ravens. Right now, the spread is Baltimore -3. So these are ranked even teams kind of on a neutral setting. Mick, we'll start with you here. I think I know your answer based off of you ranking the Ravens number 2 on your list, but what do you got here?
Yeah, this is so close. I am so glad the Eagles are playing Thursday night so that I can watch this game because normally the Eagles are playing in that 1:00 slot. Man, I was really hoping to go last here so that I could just pick against you guys and hopefully maybe get an edge in the points because I'm so torn. I think the Ravens, both of these teams are coming off electric wins, but the Ravens have done it week after week after week. And you got to think at a certain point, like, they're just going to have some sort of a letdown, but then kind of like what Evan likes to always point out, going across country is really tough, especially against an opponent like the Ravens. I think I got to go with Baltimore at home, but would not be surprised with any sort of an outcome in this game. And I am definitely going to be tuning in.
I am going to bet on the Chargers until they disappoint me, because what I saw in the game last night was I saw undisciplined behavior and essentially Lamar Jackson being able to hold on the football. Turnovers were certainly a problem. You haven't seen this get resolved. And I think that the Chargers defense is going to get after him and confuse him. And, I don't deny that Lamar has turned into an elite quarterback. He's going to get a huge deal, well-deserving deal. But I do think that the Chargers are going to bring something interesting. And I think that's it's a pretty good money line opportunity given the 3-point spread. Ev, what about you?
This is brutal, exactly how Dolan pointed out. Because on the one hand, again, going across country, as good as the Chargers are, they're going to slip up here soon. So you think Baltimore, but they just played on Monday night. Huge emotional win. Quick turnaround. And I do think the Chargers are the better team, which the line does say that they're the better team, maybe by a half point. But brutal pick. I was all ready to pick Baltimore, but I think I'm going to flip to the Chargers because of that Monday night and a potential letdown spot for Baltimore. Plus, and I do think the Chargers are the better team.
Okay. Sweet. Well, here's another great game. And Mick, we'll start this one off with you. Arizona Cardinals playing at the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns are favored actually in this game, 2.5. What do you got?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. I think from a kind of stylistic matchup perspective, you're looking at kind of similar to the game we talked about last time. One team that just wants to pound the rock and run it down your throat. Granted, the Ravens look like they are more than happy to get away from that when needed. Not quite as confident in the Browns' ability to do that. And as I touched on earlier, for whatever reason, I just cannot buy into the Cardinals. So I got to take Cleveland in kind of what feels like a must-win game with how good Baltimore's been playing as their division rival. Arizona's on the road. And then coming off that tough loss to the Chargers last week, I think a lot of things point towards Cleveland coming out on top. But, I mean, again, Kyler Murray has continued to prove me wrong, so would not be surprised otherwise. I was looking at some lines earlier this week, and the idea of doing kind of a little money line parlay, like a little risky one, would be taking Arizona and parlaying them with the Chargers, just because kind of like what we're saying, these feel like they might be the two better teams, but they're on the road and could get a decent chunk of the coin if that works out. But yeah, this will be another really fun one. I think this is the premier game in this time slot.
Yeah, this is awesome. I actually feel pretty good about Cleveland getting this one and potentially covering that, because it's a perfect flip the script opportunity after that brutal loss for Cleveland. And I think we all agree that Arizona's as good as they are. They're not like an undefeated team. They got to lose soon. So I think this is a good opportunity to pick Cleveland to cover, despite the fact that they're facing the undefeated Cardinals.
Yeah, Cleveland covers, in my opinion. I think Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney are going to eat Kyler Murray for breakfast. So I think they have the corners and the DB capability to really, to dampen the move of those receivers for Arizona as well. So I've got the Browns covering that by a field goal, and we get the money. So it's not that bad of an idea.
I think one of the interesting kind of matchups in this one, I can't remember. I know someone on Mondays Down South who pointed out the love for Owusu Koramoah come draft season. And granted, there are not many people, especially a rookie, who can have the job of, trying to contain Kyler Murray. But if you want to throw a spy on him, that dude is unbelievably quick and athletic, and he just explodes to the football. So that'll be an interesting kind of game within the game to see if they use him as like hey, we're going to try and, give you the very difficult task of trying to shut down Kyler Murray. So that'll just be interesting. Just something I wanted to point out for people to keep an eye on.
That's a great point. Yeah. And moving on here to our AFC West matchup between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Denver Broncos, both teams 3-2 and looking for a win. I believe both started 3-0. So this is a huge game. Denver actually opens with a minus 3.5 spread. I'll start this one off. I've got the Broncos by 1 million here. I think this is a deflated Raiders team. And I think the Broncos defense, top 5 in the league, especially with the elite corner play, the elite linebacker play. And I look at Las Vegas and I don't see necessarily as talented of offensive playmakers to combat that. And I think they're atrocious. And I think Gruden was kind of holding that together. So I think this is probably a good opportunity to bet on the Broncos to cover 3.5.
I'm gonna disagree. I'm torn by this one. I feel like Vegas is doing a good job with the lines this week, but I still think Vegas is a better team, and I think we might be overweighting the ability of Gruden to keep it together, because ultimately it's the players' locker room, and I think they keep the culture in line. And usually on a coaching change, even though this one is maybe under bad circumstances, they get a little positive boost here. So, and I don't think Denver's good at all. I think Denver is borderline terrible, to be honest with you. I mean, not borderline terrible, but I don't think they're good. So I'm probably going to regret this one, but I'm going to go with Vegas.
I weirdly agree with both of you. I think Denver's offense is terrible, but I do think their defense is very, very good. Vegas's defense doesn't exactly scare me. And Evan, that is a really good point about the coaching change. And I think one of the things that's also interesting about that is I can't remember what his name is, but it's like their special teams coordinator is basically going to be their interim head coach for the time being. And I don't know who's going to be taking over play calling duties, but there's going to be no tendencies on the Vegas offense right now. Like, we've seen years of like understanding kind of what John Gruden likes to do in certain situations. I think that could give Vegas a slight edge when it comes to the offense and being able to, maybe pull a fast one on Denver's defense out of nowhere. But I think at home, and I think with all the turmoil in Vegas, like it feels like one of those things that, like you were saying, might not matter. But I think I got to go maybe a homer pick here with the Broncos.
All right. I like that. Moving on to our final 4:25 p.m. game here on East Coast time. We've got the Dallas Cowboys playing against the New England Patriots, and Dallas carries a 4-point spread. Mick, we'll kick this one over to you.
I'm going to go ahead and make this my oh, wait, sorry. I was looking ahead at the Sunday night game because it was on the line below. My bad. Not a hot take yet.
He's getting ready to drop the upset pick here, Ev.
Not quite.
Is he about to pick Seattle? Oh, boy. I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that.
I think they've just got too many ways to beat you, and that's what Bill Belichick's strength is taking away your opponent's best thing. But what are you going to take away from the Cowboys offense? I think they win kind of big in this one.
Oh, that's a good point. I was going to pick New England because I was anti-Dallas and you were pro-New England earlier. But that's a good point. Tough to drop a game plan when you got Cooper, Lamb, Zeke, Schultz. I'll agree with you. I'm going to go with Dallas.
Yeah, I think Dallas wins and they cover that spread just because I don't think the Mac Jones offense scares me. I do think Dallas's defense 100% has holes. I think Dan Quinn has done a great job patching those holes. And Trayvon Diggs is clearly, he's developing into a very formidable tier 1 corner. So I've got the Cowboys here. I think they win. I think they cover 4. So we got to keep taking advantage of these Patriots spreads, Ev.
I don't think they're not 8 points better than the Patriots, though, is my point. It's in Foxborough. But
yeah,
carry on.
And they did play the Bucs really well. That's a good point. We'll move over to our Sunday night game here, Seattle at Pittsburgh, and Ed, we'll let you kick this one off.
I was tempted to pick Seattle too because I don't think Pittsburgh's very good, but it's just such a bad spot for Geno's first start Sunday Night Football at Heinz Field. So I don't like that number, but I'll take Pittsburgh to win outright.
Yeah, my excitement, not my hot take, was Seattle winning. It was Pittsburgh's going to shut them out. I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game. Bet the under. Pittsburgh wins like 17-0.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Mick, there's no better way to reignite a Pittsburgh West Virginia rivalry than an old West Virginia quarterback in Geno Smith that gets shut out on or in Heinz Field. I think
on primetime television.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Steelers comfortably cover that 4.5 spread. They started to play a lot more like a well-oiled machine, a Tomlin machine, and I think their receivers are just going to be too overpowering against that kind of underappreciated, or I would not underappreciated. I think underdeveloped Seattle Seahawks secondary. So. I have no problem with the Steelers, kind of moving past pretty easily here. And then the final game, we've got the Buffalo Bills at the Tennessee Titans, and the Bills carry a 5.5 spread in Nashville. Ev, we'll let you start the final game off here.
Yep, I got the Bills winning. That's a big number to cover on the road against a decent team, though.
Yeah, I think we all seem to have Buffalo Buffalo, number one in our ranking. So not going to get too deep into this one, but Bills are amazing. Titans are good, not great. So got to go Bills even on the road after a big win. Excited to see them in primetime again.
Now the Titans did win big last week, but I just do think that Bills defense is super stout, and the Titans, their defense is subpar. So I'm not even going to think anything more of it. I think the Bills win and they cover that 5.5. So that's kind of my stance on everything.
Love it. I'm flipping to New England over Dallas.
Really?
The Patriots always win random games, and there's no way Dallas keeps winning.
And Dallas is getting a little bit too elevated for a normal NFC East standing, right?
Agreed.
Like, we need them to come back down to 500. I could totally see them. I could totally see Belichick like drawing up something special to kind of limit them there.
Dolan made a great point, though. He usually can take away one weapon, but when you got four. But my gut's just saying that this is one that New England surprises people.
Hey, I think we'd all love to see it.
That might be
switch my pick yet, but
it might be a homer pick, but I love it. And I guess that's it, gents. Well, I doubt we'll be able to get Cy on Ireland time to upload our picks and ultimately our parlay, but we gotta get some fans following along, Zebo, man. We're killing the parlay game here, thanks to your 15-1 records. And yeah, I think that's it. Dolan, thanks for coming on. Like I said, we'll definitely get you on later in the year when we have Cy back. I know we mentioned at the top, but everyone go check out his articles. We'll send the link. Medium.com comes out with one pretty much every week, certainly during the NFL season. Yeah, last word, Nick. What do you got? Anything?
Nothing crazy. Just always happy to come back on. And shout out to Cy. Definitely missed having you on here, but I hope you're enjoying yourself over there. And looking forward again to coming back and doing it with all three of you guys. Always a blast, and appreciate you having me on.
We'll see how respectable his picks are when they come in, and we'll see how many Guinnesses he's been drinking when those picks come in. So we'll be able to kind of evaluate are they sober or are they drunk. So stay tuned, audience. But thanks again for watching, guys. This was Mondays Down South, and hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Thanks.